Hello, everyone. I'm Everton de Oliveira. On behalf of the Groundwater Project, I would like to thank you all for making groundwater visible. This is the second edition of our event, and today's session is about the photobook Making Groundwater Visible, or yet, Groundwater Invisible Stories. We have the pleasure to have here three speakers today. First is Dr. John Cherry. I don't think I have to, I need to introduce him, but let's do it anyways. John Cherry is a professor of Guelph, is a former professor of Waterloo. He's author of the bestseller Groundwater. You should read it if you haven't yet. Please do it. It's a great book. He's the recipient of the Stockholm Water Prize, the Nobel for Water, and the Lyon Prize as well. And he's the leader of the Groundwater Project. The second speaker is myself, Everton de Oliveira. I'm the founder of Hydroplan. I'm the professor Água from the Instituto Água Sustentável, Sustainable Water Institute. And I'm also a member of the board of the Groundwater Project. The third speaker is Dr. Aurélien Dumont. He's a hydrogeologist dedicated to the governance and sustainability of the use of groundwater in Spain, mainly in the agricultural sector. He's collaborator with the groundwater and human settlement sections of the Intergovernmental Hydrological Program, IHP, of UNESCO since 2015. He has worked on international projects, mainly dedicated to the knowledge and establishment of consultation mechanisms concerning transboundary aquifers. Thank you very much for you to join us today. It's a pleasure having you here to help us. But before we jump into the session itself, we would like to invite you all to help bringing this dream come true by donating to the Groundwater Project. It is due to people like you that we are bringing high quality books to anyone and making groundwater visible. We would like to thank our sponsors and supporters for their trust and commitment to make the world a better place by helping making the Groundwater Project arrive to all interested people. Our sponsors are G360, Hydroplan, TDS, Aardvark, ACOM, Equenti, Blue Metric, C3 Group, Well Water Services, GeoEnviro Pro, Golder, GSI, KGS, MTE, Solinst, Princeton Groundwater, SS Papadopoulos, Ken Pipe, and Conran Well Drilling. And our supporters are Hydrogeologists Without Borders, Instituto Água Sustentável, Water Research Commission, Groundwater Division, GSSA, GRIP, and UNESCO, as Aurélien represents it today here. Now, please, our first speaker. Welcome, Dr. John Cherry. Thank you very much for joining us today. Please.
Thank you, Everton. It's my great pleasure to be part of one of your programs, as always, in the great effort you're making to get the word about groundwater out in the world and the Groundwater Project. So pleased to be here.
Thank you very much. Would you please tell us a little bit what's going on in the last years with the Groundwater Project? How it started? Because some people that are participating, they know what's going on with the Groundwater Project, but they don't know behind the scenes what's going on and what's the effort that's being put and at what stage we are now. Please.
Well, thank you, Everton. Yeah, hundreds of people around the world, professionals and academics and researchers are contributing to the Groundwater Project by way of preparing books. We have about 20 books published and more than 100 now in the process. And these books aren't intended just to be normal textbooks. They're all online, but intended to sort of raise the bar in the quality of what books can look like. by using figures to a more major degree, and by explaining things, we hope, in a level that people can understand better and yet not be trivial. And we've got books in preparation for people at the high school level, at the university level, and even children's books. So in the long haul, just about anything that anyone would ever want to ask a question about concerning groundwater will be covered in our books. And all this got started probably 7 or 8 years ago when colleagues of mine were pressing me to do something about the Freeze Cherry groundwater book that you mentioned. It was published in 1979 and was in print until a few years ago when we had it removed from print so we could put it on the Groundwater Project website and Hydrogeology Without Borders. And so it grew from the need to maybe do a better job of that textbook into the conclusion what the world really needs if we're going to understand groundwater are hundreds and hundreds of books written for a broad readership on every topic you can imagine. Books that help people understand groundwater, but also books that help people understand the issues: agricultural contamination, fracking, nuclear waste disposal, any topic where groundwater is important to society. We want to engage experts from around the world to write things up without bias and with the best of their knowledge. So it's grown from a few of my colleagues agreeing to contribute to some books to reaching out to the global perspective to people in all languages. We've got authors in more than 15 countries on 6 continents preparing materials. And then, of course, these books will be free of charge, downloadable anywhere. And as best we can, we're getting them translated. The idea is to make groundwater knowledge available to anyone, anywhere that has the internet. And in a way, the goal here is the democratization of groundwater knowledge. So that money is not a prevention to access it. So language is not a prevention to access it. And if people can't understand certain things because the book is too advanced, then we've got other books that are intended to teach people. The goal will be to have books that teach people about everything about groundwater, about how it flows, where it occurs, how it occurs in desert environments, how it occurs in tropical environments. And the problem with groundwater education is that it's very, very limited now, what you can read from a book. It's very limited what you can learn in a groundwater course. And of course, the biases in the books and courses are all to a shall we say, it's a Western framework. The authors of books generally come from North America or Europe, and that gives a strong bias as to what groundwater looks like. Now, groundwater has become a global problem. We've got droughts going on in more than 30 countries. We've got 2 billion people around the world that don't have access to safe drinking water. We've got food being shipped around the world, and much of that food being shipped around the world is being grown with unsustainable groundwater. So we can be sitting there wherever we are and saying, well, groundwater doesn't affect me. I'm comfortable, I'm eating the food and whatnot. But the fact of the matter is that some, if not much of the food we're eating that's shipped in from somewhere else is grown unsustainably. Either it's being pumped out of aquifers that are being drained, or it's being used with too many chemical aspects from agriculture, et cetera. So I think what the Groundwater Project is doing, it's trying to bring awareness that in fact we live in a very interconnected world. And in fact, the groundwater connection is a serious part of it. And for example, even the refugee crisis, for example, that now we're experiencing in almost all parts of the globe, that's tied to groundwater. It's tied to groundwater because, in fact, when people get desperate, there's a much greater possibility of there being war. And the flight of poor people from the countryside. I mean, as soon as there's a drought, it hits poor people in the countryside doing agriculture first, and they go to the cities. And so we have this huge pressure on these huge globalized cities being crowded from people from the countryside, where much of their problem, the reason why they can't live where they've been living, is connected to groundwater. So groundwater is global, it affects us all, and we all have to get engaged. And the Groundwater Project provides an opportunity for many people to get engaged who I think had thought that they could be engaged in such a thing. There's so many ways to engage. in translations, in helping to produce books, in helping to produce figures, in helping the people in the Groundwater Project to understand what the problems are, so that we're not so myopic, etc.
Thank you. John, I have a question for you. We're focusing our whole event this year on stories, you know, that people, how the communities are related to groundwater and they don't even know.
Yes.
You've been seeing this throughout your whole career and your whole life, because more than your career, this is your passion, and we can see as you say. Can you tell us some stories, for example, that you know that communities are connected to groundwater, that they don't see it, they don't even know it, and they should be worried, please?
Well, yeah, I mean, my life is a life of groundwater stories. I mean, I got into water research because my parents grew up in Saskatchewan on the Canadian prairies, which is our dry part of the interior of Canada. And back in the 1930s, when there was a major economic collapse in that part of the world, there was a major drought. So I heard my parents talking about water and what it was like back in that era. And I suppose that's what got me into groundwater, you know, stories. And when I think of groundwater, then its importance, I'm always thinking of the villages or the communities or the pollution or the cancer clusters or whatever that I encounter in my travels. And the idea of the coffee table book is a brilliant one, because groundwater doesn't mean anything to anybody outside of the field. And we groundwater people all know that when we attempt to talk about groundwater with people outside of our circle, we're viewed as being odd or boring, because we've got pictures alive in our head and we can't translate them so that people understand. And for example, you know, one of my stories, I was doing a groundwater project in the outskirts of Mexico City in the early 1980s. And we were out in the favelas, you know, out in the slums where the population moves in from the rural areas, and they establish a community. And they lay it out on the outskirts of Mexico City. And then eventually, the way it works in Mexico is the government comes in and provides services. And I remember the day I was standing by a big drill rig. It didn't have anything to do with me, but the drill rig had arrived and water was gushing out of this well in the slum in Mexico City. And all the parents and the children were all rallying around, and the children were getting under the spraying water and whatnot. It was such an event from them. In that case, groundwater coming out of a well was the change in living in a slum where water is your most miserable part of your life to having fresh water for cooking and washing and whatnot. And now I probably took a photograph of it, but I can't find it. Like, that was years ago. And when I give talks now to try and convince people that groundwater is important, I'm lacking all of those things. I'm lacking a way of expressing how groundwater impacts people. And it's pictures of joy. More recently, about 3 years ago, I was out in the hills west of Mexico City. But again, just happened to be Mexico. I don't go to Mexico very often. And I was up at a mining site, a gold mining site, where a colleague of mine from Vancouver is developing a gold mine. And he brought his drill rig drilling for gold up there, and he drilled a well. And what was astounding was basically he drilled to 500 meters, found an amazing amount of water. And that water then will basically change the lives of all the little communities living around there. Because at the time, they were getting just a little bit of water out of a spring up in the hills with hundreds of little pieces of plastic tubing going down to all the little families and villages and whatnot. And it reminded me once again that a well with water coming out of the ground can change lives instantaneously. And so the amazing thing about groundwater is that in many countries, we're pumping away too much groundwater. The aquifers are drying up, and that's going to show up in limited food supply. And for 3 or more billion people around the globe, they're not pumping too much groundwater. They don't have enough wells to pump groundwater. So in one case, we're over pumping and polluting. In the other case, we're not getting groundwater to where people need it.
It's very good, very good. John, thank you very much. We'll come back to you after the talk. We have the other presentations to stir up discussion by the end. So thank you very much for your brilliant discussion. We'll come back to you very soon. Now, it's our second speaker, which is myself. So you have to put up with me a little bit more. If every one of us adds a drop, we'll have an ocean. And this photo book, this coffee table book, as they say in North America, it's presented by Instituto Água Sustentável, the Groundwater Project, and Terra Virgem Edições. Well, as you know, this is a very famous place in North America. Every one of these tourists are watching groundwater surfacing. It's a beautiful area. We can see all the colors, and hydrogeologists know the geochemistry that makes this color so beautiful. And yet, most tourists don't even know, and they don't have a faint idea of what is going on underneath their feet. It's groundwater coming to surface. And we're trying to make a book, we're putting a book together to make groundwater visible. The temporary, or the name of the book is Making Groundwater Visible, or Groundwater Invisible Stories. And it's organized by myself, Everton, and John Cherry, and has the support of UNESCO, okay? Groundwater is invisible. We all know that groundwater provides more than a third of the global drinking water and supports half of the food production. It is amazing. Actually, the number half, after we worked with John and Warren Wood and understanding the base flow of rivers, that groundwater provides 50% of the base flow of rivers, we know that the food production depends on groundwater, and more than 70%. That's an astounding number that everybody should know. Groundwater is present on the lives of most people on Earth, even if they don't realize its importance. It's so important. Most water-related NGOs and authorities need to be aware of the groundwater presence and its importance. So, with a photo book or a coffee table book, we are breaking the circle of expert-only subject, enriching the public at large, as it was clearly mentioned by John a few minutes ago. Also, we'll have stories of different people and their invisible relation to groundwater. We're talking to their hearts. People are not really keen on science, but the messages that are related to their lives are very important. They don't know that groundwater is important. They will understand the importance as they related the groundwater to their lives. It's just making what is invisible visible. We'll show daily habits and actions of people that have a relation with groundwater. We'll lift the curtain of groundwater to NGOs acting for water access and sanitation throughout the world. As you know, we have many NGOs and people bringing water to poor places. John mentioned to us, and you see Aurélien talking about that as well from his personal experience with UNESCO. You have the joy of people when they see water coming from the ground and they have water close to their houses where they had a hard time because water was so scarce, right? So people bring groundwater, but after the well is in place, nobody ever thinks that this is groundwater. And what's the relationship with that? What should I do to keep this water or this well for running dry? So some of the information are very close to people's lives, and yet the information and the culture and the knowledge of groundwater is not settled on most people that should know, especially politicians and people that act for water. So we're bringing groundwater and we're making this visible to most people. Well, what is the book content? The book will have captivating stories of people and groundwater. Most stories, when you see, they are already captivating. I'm telling you, I'm bringing you some of them that you will see throughout this event. I'll bring you one from Arjun in India. This is so touching, so touching. Well, in India, as you should know, India is a country that relies heavily on groundwater. They use or they extract about a third of all the water that is extracted from the ground all over the planet. It is a large use of groundwater. So they know groundwater. And yet they're having problems. Why? Because they lack management. Some people have knowledge, but not all the users. So one well starts interacting with another. So if this guy pumps too strongly, this might get his well dry. So this is happening because some aquifers, some level of the groundwater is getting lower, and then the well doesn't reach the water any longer. And when that happens, the well is useless. And there's a tragic outcome of that story. In India, about one farmer commits suicide every 30 minutes. I'll repeat that to you. One farmer commits suicide every 30 minutes because their well ran dry. And that's the well they use to produce food and to get their earnings from selling the food, from selling its production. It's quite amazing, and people should know. And how we can prevent that? By using groundwater knowledge. We have knowledge. We just need to make the government aware of that and put the knowledge in place so we make a better use of that. I have other stories, and I'll tell you some during this presentation. We'll have 13 to 15 stories. Of course, we have way more than that throughout the world, but we'll pick some that are very captivating to show. So there's communities around the globe. We have many more, and we will see this during our presentation. We'll have, on top of that, positive photographs of different communities and their habits to raise interest to all people. As you know, groundwater is invisible. And you see at the back of our presentation here is a well, or actually is a natural geyser. The water is coming from the ground, and that attracts a lot of attention. When you think of a hydrogeologist have a hard time producing nice pictures of groundwater. Why? Because groundwater is underground. How can we take a picture of something that we don't see? But we do see the importance of groundwater, and we should actually make everybody understand that that relationship is important for their lives. Actually, is more than important. It's basic. We'll have also in the book an inspirational introductory test connecting all the different stories of communities, so we can make the stories connected by groundwater. We're making groundwater visible. What are the products of all these books? Are not only the book. We have the printed book itself, which is a great product you should buy to help the Groundwater Project when it's done. But we'll have also independent stories to be worked with on social media. Today, we live in a century where communications, play a very important role. If we don't communicate properly, we're losing our knowledge and we're wasting some of our nice research because people don't get it. So we'll have to have these stories so people can understand what's going on with their lives and why science is important. It's not an easy step, but with your help, we'll make it visible. We'll have groundwater related photos to raise social interest in social media as well. Not only, we are producing large prints to be used in exhibitions, of course, pandemic allowing. This pandemic is going on for so long and we are so worried, but hopefully by the end of this year, it's all gone and we can get together and see these nice pictures and help groundwater being visible to everybody. We're gonna contact, we're actually also already doing it, contact artists, and today we call them influencers, to put their witness to the groundwater and the importance of groundwater in people's lives. So we're using people outside the groundwater community. We're a tiny community, but we do an important work that people don't know. So we're making groundwater visible with the help of many influencers throughout the world. We also have a documentary web series with book story details to tell people what's going on. We have a book trailer publicized on social media. We'll have online marketing, yes, with influencers and advertisement. Yes, we have to be professional if you want to reach out to the world at large. We'll have an event with the book release and our online presence. Well, we haven't contacted yet these guys, but we're trying to get them. If you have contacts, please help us contacting them. Like MattDamonWater.org is very close. We're using the help of UNESCO to reach some of them. The Earthshot Project of Prince William, Dave Attenborough works with that. John Cherry is our Nobel Prize, is present here today. And many others to help us making groundwater visible. So we're making groundwater visible. The world needs the water, groundwater. Don't miss the opportunity to make the world a better place. Thank you very much. All right, after that, I have the pleasure to bring to you our third speaker, Dr. Aurélien Dumont. Thank you, Aurélien. Please, your turn.
Thank you, Everton. I'm very delighted to be part of the talk today. And thank you again for the invitation to UNESCO to be part of the history of this so valuable initiative of the Groundwater Project, and this more specifically this book that you just presented. This is a very an amazing initiative, and certainly I will expand more on that during my presentation. But before that, and highlighting how this is so relevant also for all the events that will take place this year, this Groundwater Year 2022, because as you know, UN Water has defined the year 2022, well, the World Water Day 2022, taking place 22 of March, as under the topic of groundwater, making visible the invisible. So this is really a great opportunity for all of our community of groundwater specialists to tell to the world how groundwater resources are so important for the life, and to share this kind of experiences. And before getting into more details of all the events that will take place this year, maybe I will start with a few words about UNESCO and how UNESCO is involved in groundwater for so many years. In fact, we can say that UNESCO is the only organization within the UN system which just focus on groundwater. We have a dedicated department, a section within the Intergovernmental Hydrogeological Program that is dedicated to the study of and sharing of knowledge and of groundwater for so many years. And if we look back at the history, this is start in the 60s or 70s. With the idea really to bring science, groundwater science, as a way to generate discussion at the time where dialogue was so essential in a polarized world between the East and West, and UNESCO was really the place where scientists could exchange and knowledge, and in particular, one of the first big initiatives that took place at that time was regarding hydrogeological mapping. Maybe you remember all of the publication of this product about having an international hydrogeological legend to allow countries of the world to have a common reference when mapping hydrological resources. Well, from my side, I was too young, certainly, so I don't remember this, but I read about this. In particular, we have a publication on this initiative of 50 years of groundwater mapping that was released a few years ago in 2014 by our collaborator, and which name is Willy Struckmeyer. You can look at the UNESCO portal of publication. There you have all many publication groundwater about all these years, and this is totally open access and also free to all to access all this publication. And so, well, this is just an example. Also, you may remember more recently the WIMAP initiative, the World Hydrological Mapping, that produced this groundwater map of the world that really has been very instrumental to show the importance of groundwater in many regions of the world, highlighting where we had these big groundwater basins where in many cases spanning across many countries. So that's why also UNESCO was pioneering also in promoting on the governance of transboundary aquifer resources. And so yes, so many initiatives about bringing science and knowledge and the importance of groundwater. And of course, the role of UNESCO is not limited to this. This concerns also education, capacity building, spreading all this knowledge among the different communities and audiences. So again, we see how we can join forces with an initiative as the Groundwater Project. And last but not the least, it has been also very essential for UNESCO to raise awareness also for this, as I said, for these different audiences, and especially also at more at the top at the UN level, to ensure that always groundwater was there. And this is really certainly a result of all, if we can say, this lobbying for so many years, that we now are the year 2022 and have this World Water Day officially defined as dedicated to groundwater, and all the year 2022 with all these events on groundwater. So this is really the occasion to celebrate all together and to spread the word to the world. Sorry, about this importance of groundwater. And in fact, really a key word for UNESCO as being partnership, was with all these achievements that I mentioned. Some example previously are really linked to collaboration with so many partners in the academia, the UNESCO member states, the NGOs, the UN system, or our water family.
Your dog is not barking, don't worry.
Yeah. Okay. So now, yes, for UNESCO, what has been really key as a keyword is really doing all these activities that I mentioned previously in partnership. All the achievements that I mentioned, some example previously, so were done through the collaboration with the academia, the UNESCO member states, NGOs, of course, all the UN organization partners. At UNESCO, we have what we call the water family, the UNESCO water family, and I should, for instance, mention the International Groundwater Assessment Center, IGRAC, located in the Netherlands, a UNESCO center, which, for instance, has published the Transboundary Aquifer Map, which is also a tool, a publication that is really also useful for awareness raising, because even more sometimes than the existence of groundwater, the existence of transboundary aquifers is not even known for many audiences, for most people. And so, yes, now to go back in the spirit of partnership, I think this is and the interest to build on the experience of many partners. This initiative of the Groundwater Project has been so interesting to observe in the last few years. As we can see now, all the achievements with so many books already provided, already published on the website, freely accessible to and covering so many subjects that are sometimes at quite general level, basic understanding of what are groundwater resources, and are in fact also should be shared to non-specialists of groundwater, to water resources experts, but also much beyond, even a book for children I saw. So this is really valuable as an initiative. And well, and this is really this network that I understand that you are building is very valuable, and where the members can contribute with this visible impact of having these publications, not like really a classic professional association, but really with having the willingness to deliver this knowledge and share it. So this is of course really in line with the spirit of UNESCO. And if we look more particularly at this idea of this photo book, this is, I think, something that is really totally on time to reveal to a wide audience the hidden nature of groundwater by showing its impact across the world, showing these stories, how groundwater really play a role in the daily life of people. This is something that is also needed to a little bit raise more awareness and open the eyes of and interest different public and audiences. So yes, I was mentioning at the beginning, this year 2022 will be the occasion, the opportunity to show to the world all this importance of groundwater, the value of groundwater, all these resources are so precious, so essential for so many human direct use, but also creating and sustaining so many features in the landscape. For instance, all these groundwater dependent ecosystems. We are losing so many wetlands, oases, or even intermittent river that are such full of biodiversity and have also importance for climate change, as there are pools of carbon storage, for instance. So we have also to show all this importance of groundwater as a direct human, as direct user of groundwater, but also groundwater sustaining so many ecosystems in the world and providing biodiversity. So yes, so many messages to spread around during this year. We will have several events. We starting with the World Water Day that is taking place at the same time as the World Water Forum in Dakar, where let's hope the international community will join. Of course, this will depend a little bit of the evolution of the current situation. And then later in the year, we will have, for instance, a congress, a scientific congress in Paris on the groundwater role for the sustainable development goals, groundwater and the SDGs at the Sorbonne University. So I invite you to all also to submit a presentation there and to gather there. Then the World Water Week topic of this year will also be around making visible the invisible. So with several seminars, scientific seminars, and the call for the main topics are regarding groundwater resources. So another opportunity to both online and in Stockholm in August, September, beginning of September. And last but not the least, all this 2022 year will end with a UN Water summit that will be taking place at UNESCO. So gathering stakeholders and decision makers at a higher level, politicians, to really take the stock of all the events and all the messages that would have been addressed during this year at the upper level, at the highest level, and then to pave the way. Next step to the UN conference on water in 2023, which will be the second one fully dedicated to water after the Mar del Plata conference. So far, the only water conference at UN level was the Mar del Plata conference in 1977, if I remember well of the dates. And so this is also a big event in next year, and we have to ensure that our messages on groundwater are there. So thank you again, and if you need some more details on some of the aspects I mentioned, we can continue our conversation.
Thank you very much. That was very, I'm glad to hear all the opportunities that we have to spread the word about the groundwater to the world. So John, I'd like to make a question here for both of you, see if we can start talking. We've been working with UNESCO, and UNESCO has lots of experience on their own because they have lots of countries participating. What do you think about groundwater? Can we make good progress towards making groundwater knowledge more integrated with politics?
As a Canadian, I would have to say that we are probably now at the political level the least groundwater conscious country that I know of. And we have a federal government that doesn't really have much jurisdiction over water except rivers flowing across boundaries. And then local water, such as groundwater, is the jurisdiction of the provinces. So in essence, Canada is a collection of 10 small countries. And recently our Prime Minister realized, like 10 years ago or 8 years ago when he became Prime Minister, that we need some federal coordination. So he announced that he would start a Canadian water agency to try and get a focus on water. And he's re-announced that. It hasn't happened yet. But in the document that was produced by our major federal department on what this Canadian agency would do, the word groundwater wasn't mentioned. And yet 30% of Canadians drink groundwater, and groundwater sustains our ecology. And there are many, many communities in Canada, all small communities, not the big city where the voters reside. So Canada is a microcosm of, shall we say, of ignorance at the political level. And that comes now largely from ignorance at the government departments level, because as groundwater has disappeared from government departments, then the politicians have no one to get words from. So it's and I think this state of affairs is not uncommon around the world. Although groundwater in Canada, we have a lot of fresh water. We have lakes and rivers, so we're basically groundwater unconscious, even though we have 30% of the population who are involved. So the question is, what can be done to change that? And it's not clear. Like there's March 22nd will create quite a fuss, but whether or not it creates a fuss in a country like Canada to have a single article on water on March 22nd, that's a question. Can the hydrogeologic community manage to get to the media to the point where there'd even be a note about groundwater on an international day? And of course, it raises the issue: what can UNESCO and what can all of the rest of us do? And it's not clear. Now, the Coffee Book Project, the point there is to get something in the hands of people outside of the groundwater community that's visually interesting and impactful. So, of course, that's a very good endeavor. And the Groundwater Project, we're trying to make sure that we've got things published so that anybody in a government department or anybody anywhere could read it and kind of understand. So groundwater really, I mean, it's wonderful that this is going to be the year of groundwater, and it's wonderful that March 22nd is going to have a lot of fanfare. And for us in the groundwater community, this is a wonderful development. But how it can actually be converted to anything that's substantial, I don't know. I mean, I've won 2 of these prizes, the Lee Kuan Yew Water Prize in Singapore in 2016, and then the Stockholm Water Prize in 2020. And those are wonderful things to win as an individual. But what I found was I suppose the negative side of it was that it was extremely difficult for me as a groundwater expert to actually find an audience interested in groundwater at all. It's one thing to give a prize, and it's another thing to actually find interest in the topic, because it's invisible. But it's invisible to the human eye, but it's become increasingly invisible to the bureaucracies of the world. Why would that be? Well, it's almost never that a groundwater educated person rises high in the bureaucracies. 40 years ago, basically, there was one of the groundwater members of the groundwater community rose to be a deputy minister. So how can we have any attention high in the bureaucracies if our species is not represented? And representativeness now, of course, is a great political cause. Everybody being representative, humanity has made great progress. But in the water bureaucracies, we have the groundwater specialist as the endangered species. And we're more and more endangered, because in fact, as the population increases, it's not as if there are more university courses around the world. In fact, I would say on average, and I don't have the numbers to back up this, I would say there are less and less groundwater courses around the world of the type that are needed. There's specialty courses getting into the little details of pollution or whatever. So we're an endangered species, and our trajectory is very poor. We're an endangered species in terms of how we're represented in the bureaucracy. We're the hydrogeological community is vibrant. IH has 4,500 members, and it has meetings all over the world. So our community is vibrant, and yet in the bigger picture, we're an endangered species.
You've seen this in other places. What can you say?
Yes, well, thank you for your question. We can answer to your question at looking at different levels. Of course, if we go back to this advocacy level and the fact that, well, UNESCO is, for instance, also the IHP before the name was International Hydrological Program. Now this is Intergovernmental Hydrological Program. We change the I from international to intergovernmental to show more that this is really a program that belongs to the member states, and that there's a word to say, and that our messages are there to help member states to better be capacitated in their water resources management in general, and in particular with a strong message on groundwater. But still, this is at a specific level, and at international level. But for to look at another layer, if you can say another level, we should also see what, for instance, UNESCO is doing at a project level. UNESCO has been in the last 20 years the implementing partner for several projects at transboundary level, for transboundary aquifer, specific transboundary aquifer across the world. I am thinking, for instance, of the work that we are doing on the Stamford transboundary aquifers shared between South Africa, Botswana, and Namibia, where a governance mechanism has been established that is nested in the River Basin Organization, the RASECOM, but that ensures that really these countries are working together to manage sustainably the groundwater resources. So this, of course, maybe the impacts, we have more impact when we work at local level, at specific aquifer, for instance. This is where we can establish a dialogue also with the states, the member states, with the ministries of water resources, the different stakeholders on a more long-term basis. Of course, this is still project-based, so we all know the limits also of this project-based approach where we work during the project duration, you think 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, but then at some point the donors stop financing, and then what happens next? So we have to ensure also this sustainability, to ensure that of the action, to ensure that governments and states are taking really the lessons in there and improve the practices at more long-term level. So that is also a way where UNESCO is quite active. To go back a little bit to somewhat of what John was mentioning about the need to reach more visibility for groundwater, I would again a little bit highlight what I mentioned in my previous intervention of the need maybe to link the challenges of groundwater with other big challenges such as food security, such as biodiversity, and the fundamental role that groundwater has for so many wetlands and around the world, for instance, and where groundwater is really key to protect this biodiversity of linked to groundwater dependent ecosystems. Of course, the topic of climate change, the role of climate change, of groundwater to mitigate the effect of climate change. So we should work maybe more also with the linking groundwater to the big topics in terms of sustainability that reach much attraction currently in the world.
Very good, very good.
Everton, if I could comment some more. So climate change gets all of the environmental coverage in the media. And all the debate about how we should limit CO2 and methane, and all of that's appropriate. But droughts are coming regardless. And even if we improve our greenhouse gas emissions, if we reduce them, the change is in progress, the droughts are in progress. So then the question is, if society wants to mitigate the effects of climate change, what is the single most important aspect? It's water. I mean, air conditioning for people who can afford it once it gets hotter. And after that, it's water, because water is food. So almost never do you hear a high-ranking government figure bring that out. So if we want to mitigate the effects of climate change, it's all about water. But the surface water is disappearing. So it's all about groundwater. So I think organizations like UNESCO and every other organization in the world, that message has got to become across, because the public are being misled. The public are saying, oh, climate change, this is terrible. Well, what are governments doing to mitigate it? Oh, and furthermore, it's a matter of the numbers. So a common number is that 20% or 40% of the world's food is produced by irrigation in one way or another. And that 40% of that is groundwater. No, that's not correct. 40% of it is groundwater from wells, but half the groundwater flowing in rivers is groundwater. So in fact, the groundwater dependence on the food dependence on groundwater is huge. So our numbers don't get out there very well. Of the people migrating to the big urban centers, how many are being driven there by, in fact, the fact that they can't survive out in the country, and it's largely about water. The goal of reducing the 2.1 billion people who don't have safe drinking water, that goal has been missed. The number's going up. Why is that? Because it'll never work unless there are more wells. So I think the groundwater community has been unable to get its numbers up into the spotlight. And in many cases, we don't really know what the numbers are. Like, that irrigation number, it's been out there published incorrect for forever. So if Everton, you started this conversation off by asking about the political issue. Yeah. And the political issue derives from the fact that getting our message out there has been difficult, and we, the groundwater community, have to do better. What percentage of the refugee problem at the end of the day is caused by the fact that people can't live on the land, et cetera, et cetera. For example, how many cities are sinking because of aquifer compaction? How many cities are sinking faster because of groundwater overpumping than sea level rise? You never see in the IPCC reports about cities sinking because of groundwater overpumping. So we're not, the groundwater community is not represented high in the bureaucracies, so that we're extinct for practical purposes. And then we're not getting our numbers out there. I don't know how we do it, but that's now got to be a high goal.
I agree with you, John. I agree with you. We, as you know, we have, and I'd like to talk to Aurélien about that as well. Our time is getting close to the end here, but I would like to bring that since you mentioned. Myself and Bruna, we published an open editorial here in Brazil, and I will make available to all of you who's watching us here. It's just click and download. Mentioning that we are drying out our continents. And Aurélien mentioned many rivers that are going dry, lakes are going dry, wetlands are going dry. What's happening is that groundwater is flowing out of aquifers and it doesn't offer more water to the surface water. People don't see that, right? So we're having a huge problem in the world due to use of groundwater, bad management, that's what it's called. Yeah. But it's bad management because people don't have the information, the proper information on how to do it properly. Can we do it properly? Of course we can. We have the science. We just don't have the willpower to make it happen, because you have to change the economy. So it is. I don't agree with you that we're on a species that's going on an extinction, John. I think we're going to grow just because it's going to be needed. It's going to be needed. There's no way out for us if we don't take a good care of our water.
I should have said, I think we're going extinct from the point of view of influence.
Yes.
Like I mentioned, the groundwater community is a vibrant community. Yep. But we're extinct in the world where species are seen.
Well, we're working to
I know.
That.
Yeah. But Everton, you mentioned, and it's a problem of governance, but you get the governance that you deserve in a way. So basically, it all boils down to what you're saying. It boils down to getting the word out there. And that's what this year is all about.
We have the ODS, the objectives of UN, right? Yeah. And water is in some of them, right? Water is some of them. If the companies, and then we have the companies working along with the UN to produce things that the government don't. So if companies work on those ESG formulas, increasing, actually putting the formula for water into their businesses, because if they run out of water, they're gonna go broke. There's no way they can work without water companies. So they need that. Communities around that, consumers need water. So if consumers don't have water, their products are not being they're not gonna sell their products. So we have to introduce that to them. So it's our job to make it happen. And that's why we have UNESCO here with us, because they're thinking on the same line that we are. Correct, Aurélien?
Exactly, yes. I mentioned several examples previously, but just to come back to the issue of this overuse of groundwater resources, I think it will have to look also at the matter of incentives. Well, for pumping groundwater is bringing energy, so we have a global market for energy, for electricity. There are global agricultural markets that give the incentives for instance, for farmers to produce food. And so, or is it that our decision as a community is just based on external incentives of global markets, of the energy price and food price that just gives the incentive to overpump groundwater? Aren't we able also to give a limit of how much is possible to extract for our environment? What is the decision-making process to allow this limitation of being able to take from our environment for our water and groundwater resources just what we need and what is valuable and acceptable for the community? So this is, I see a little bit this discrepancy of yes, all decisions taken based on macroeconomics. Even, for instance, in Europe, the agricultural policy that is defined at European level with all these subsidies that has disastrous effects on overpumping in Spain, for instance, regarding olive groves, for example, or vineyards. Where that are irrigated based on groundwater just because it is profitable, thanks to the subsidies, not only the market, but the subsidies that the European Union has given sometimes. So we are very in situations where we think, oh, the local community can take back control to their own local environment and protect their own close environment where they live, their daily life. Now there is a new resolution at UN level also of a human right to live in a healthy environment. So how can this could help to local community? Not also we have the well-known human rights for drinking water, but now there is also this new recognized human right. How this could help also to rethink a little bit the relation that we have with our environment. There is a lot of interesting debate also at these levels. So and somehow UNESCO is also bringing this message. Of course, when we look more directly to groundwater, there's this needs for data, knowledge, investment in groundwater, because we should not also give only the message that this is problematic to overpump groundwater and that the groundwater pumping generates damages. No, these damages have to be taken account to synergize with also other type of resources, surface water. Also with we hear more and more about unconventional resources, wastewater reuse, desalination, where we have to look at this mix, and also groundwater has a role to play if we develop wisely these groundwater resources. Of course, groundwater use should not be looked only regarding its impact, but also the opportunity it offers when we have a full mix of resources. So all these linkages to take into account conjunctive water resources management and so on. By the way, UNESCO last year, I think or 2 years ago, we published a book on conjunctive water resources management, looking a little bit at this aspect that I invite you also to consult.
But the problem is there are hardly any initiatives that are going to matter. So, for example, if the organic food movement allows people to vote at the grocery store. So if you want to eat food that's healthier, you can pay for it. You can now, and it's advertised, you can buy fair trade food. Okay, and that means that some organizations are making sure that there's not too much human exploitation. But until the day comes when we can buy food that is grown with sustainable water, nothing important is going to happen. And all groundwater problems are local. So if the local people, you and I and whatnot, if we can't vote with their pocketbook, there is no hope. Now, everybody knows that aquifers are being depleted. Okay, and Everton, your term, we're drying out the continents. That's brilliant. Okay, the question then is, what initiative could happen that would actually make a difference? So the Groundwater Project is trying to make a difference. Okay, and we're getting books out there. The coffee table book is trying to make a difference. And the question then is, what other projects are there that'll make a difference? And of course, the climate change people are having their problem. Okay, does buying an electric car make a difference? Well, I have an electric car and it's faster and it's better and it's quieter, but I'm not sure it's making any difference. It'll depend on where the energy comes from, etc. So in fact, making groundwater visible, we have to get it to the point where people can vote with their pocketbook. And the question is like, how do we do that? And there's nobody that disagrees with the fact that we don't need more ecological agriculture. But when you read an article on ecological agriculture, when have you ever heard the word groundwater mentioned? So I think there are some battles to be fought here that are very, very specific. How do we make a difference?
Very good.
Exactly. Just a point exactly on, I think you mentioned the issue of, organic farming and labeling, exactly having a label telling you that your product you buy is using water sustainably. This would be a so big achievement for in the future. Or I think, for instance, in Spain, there are some NGOs that started to develop a label to try to assess that there's not illegal groundwater pumping or illegal water pumping, water use in the product you buy. So this is the first step. This is a good idea.
Yeah.
And but even if you look at the organic product regulations, I think it's the case in all the countries of the world for the certification of organic products. You have not even a single word or very minor about water use. Yeah. So this is also a way to go to maybe through all these certification schemes to encourage better integration of the stakes linked to water, because at the end it's also our role as consumer, and then we make the loop. No, we go our role as consumer, aware consumer. So all the initiatives that we talk about since the beginning of this talk is about raising awareness to the general audience. Yeah. So as a more aware consumer, we can then expect also better information in the choice we make when we go to the grocery shop and buy our stuff.
And if there's a group in Spain starting to do this, we need to find out about them, Everton. We need to get them up here in our involvement. And I think one of the things that we're trying to do in the Groundwater Project, and you're particularly doing, Everton, with your shows and whatnot, is to pull out these people who have got some things going on. So thank you very much for mentioning that. We need to follow that up. And you know, a few weeks ago, I bought some asparagus. I'm right at the moment, I'm living in a small fishing village in Nova Scotia. It's in the middle of nowhere in Canada. And I go to a grocery store and I see asparagus sitting there at the wrong time of the year. And I look at the label, and where's it come from? Peru. And then I look on the web and I find out there's a professor somewhere in Europe who's written a paper on how disastrous groundwater depletion is in Peru to start this shipping out of asparagus and whatnot. So on one hand, people will be eating the asparagus thinking they're having a very healthy meal, and yet they're damaging other people's possibility for having a livelihood. The poor farmers there, they're not getting the benefit from it, not the people actually on the ground doing the work. Anyway, very, very good comments.
But by the way, we'll have here, since you mentioned, John, we have a social scientist from Peru. We have a session with her, and she's mentioning how groundwater is poorly used in Peru. Session, the stories of Peru here in our event. One of the sessions. It's quite interesting. If you're willing to participate, you are always welcome. So please, our time is getting up here. We have to finish. So I'd like you to put a final statement, please. John, go first.
Well, it's my usual theme. Groundwater is 99% of all liquid fresh water. Groundwater is everywhere beneath our feet. A healthy groundwater environment is important to all of us, and this is known to very few. So our challenge is to get the citizenry aware so that they can influence the political realm. And of course, the three of us on this call here and the people working with you, Everton, that's what we're trying to do. So we just have to hang in there. And there's nothing like dialogue and communication to find more possibilities and more people and find out the good things. And the thing about groundwater is it's so dispersed that there are wonderful things going on in the world. The challenge is to find them, like the group in Spain that you mentioned.
Very good, thank you. Aurélien?
Yes, very quickly, I think I've already provided some messages in my previous intervention about the opportunity of reaching to wider audiences and to share knowledge as very big endeavor to make improve our environment, our use of groundwater resources. But just to end, I would like to have a few words to pay tribute to Ramon Llamas, Professor Ramon Llamas, who passed away a few weeks ago, and he was part of the talk you had last year of the Groundwater Project. And I think many of the messages and that we had today, he had already thought about it in the past and shared these messages. Well, by the way, he was my PhD supervisor, so that's why also I wanted to mention him there. So he's also, from a personal point of view, very important for what I've been contributing to this field of groundwater resources and science and governance. So yes, well, just to end with this small tribute. Thank you very much, Everton, again for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Aurélien. Thank you, John. I would like to thank everybody. We have a very interesting discussion. We have, some loose ends that we have to work. We have lots of things to do about groundwater. UNESCO is doing a great job, especially this year with this topic of groundwater, to raise the attention of the world towards groundwater. So it's up to us, hydrogeologists, that are watching us here, that could help. So if you're watching us today, and if you can tell your friends, please help us, send us suggestions on how to make groundwater visible. We are working to make the world a better place, but we need the brains of everybody. Everybody has their own ideas and their own experience, and that is important. Never think a small experience is not important. It is very important, because those personal experience is what talks to people's hearts. That's why they understand groundwater. And it's not the science that we're talking about. It's the relationship that people have that is so important, and we like to have. So we'd like to thank you all for participating. Please help us making groundwater visible by following us on social media, sharing with your friends, and post like our content. Distribute our material, help translate our books and publications to your own language. This is so important. And consider, of course, making a donation. We are a not-for-profit organization that depends on you. We would like to thank again all of our sponsors. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. Thanks for watching us.
Bye.